Hi. Um, okay, yeah, so what I'm about to say isn't meant to be like moral grandstanding or like I'm not trying to, do virtue signaling. In fact, like my motives really have no bearing on, I guess, the point I'm going to try to make. Ultimately, I think that the way that society, like our like Western society, handled, I guess, the Epstein scandal and I guess the ongoing cover up of the whole thing, really calls into question, I guess, a lot of the points that I hear being made by, I guess, yeah, like neoconservatives and, you know, those such people. Basically, recently, like Ted Cruz, I've heard like a lot of the talks that he's given, echoing like the words of like Benjamin Netanyahu, and even like Sam Harris. I know not being as explicit in this kind of rhetoric, but at the same time, still, I guess, essentially promoting the same idea that I guess Western society, like Western liberal democracies, are I guess just this unambiguous force for good in the world, and I guess like all those like Muslim countries are just a bunch of like barbaric animals who want to like murder civilians. Like a lot of people who support going to war and like they really have to appeal to the sense of the battles of light or like the battle between light and darkness or like the battle between civilization and barbarism and really like even going back to I guess the core foundation of like Zionism is really the sense of I guess just like Western Jewish culture. It's like while you'll hear a lot of like argumentation in support of Zionism is like the Palestinians like they didn't have a culture, like they were just like these random scattered Arabs that ultimately the whole line of reasoning is that I guess the European culture that I guess the settlers brought in from the West into Palestine, like that entitled them to the land that other people lived on. So again, I'm not going to really address that argument too much, other than just that the argument really misses the points because it's still upholding this paradigm of like you know people who come from the West, like we have culture that is worth like imposing on the rest of the world. The rest of the world just needs to get in line with what we want, or I guess they can just get scattered away, like killed off and sent to other countries as refugees. It doesn't really matter. And so like going back to the whole like Epstein scandal thing is like I think even just on a surface level, I think yeah, there's like I've heard people make the argument that the way that our society is, the way that we I guess idolize like the ultra wealthy, the elites, really I guess are seem kind of reluctant to question the people we idolize, as well as just the whole way we push this, I guess, idea of entitlement, like entitlement to, I guess, use vulnerable people as, I guess, like pleasure objects, and I think all those things are reflective of just like really sick aspects of our society, and really like thinking about what the whole like I don't want to get like graphic, but like the whole like what the whole human trafficking thing is, what the whole like slavery thing is. I guess like ultimately the most like I guess absolute form of I guess exploitation. Um, like to the point that I guess you're causing somebody a lifelong trauma and ruining their life. I guess for like really it serves no purpose other than your own like uh, momentary pleasure. I think that just I guess reflects a lot of just the extremely high like sociopathic levels of I guess narcissism and entitlement we have in the West. And you can say like that's really not just like the elites. That's not just like the elite monsters that our society has produced. I think it is really reflected also in the way that I guess just society as a whole, how the media responded to it. You could say yeah, it became like in 2019, like when he went to prison and like got killed and stuff. That was like big scandal. Everyone's talking about it, but it seemed like people were more intrigued by it. It didn't feel like that was a genuine call for justice. It really wasn't like a deep critique of the system that empowered like the elites to act that way. I guess it was really just like an aggrandized, I guess, like a true crime like episode almost that captivated the country for a while. And then after a while, it didn't intrigue us anymore, and I guess we just kind of moved on. without really. I like the whole point of analyzing it, not just being intrigued by it, not just promoting it, I guess, for views. I guess the realization that the people who have the most power in our society are genuinely willing to commit heinous acts against like innocent people and like children even. And like even those who like didn't, I guess, directly do that, like they either knew about it and I guess they didn't think it was that big of a deal, or otherwise, like even if they didn't know about it at the time, I mean, now that it is widely known that, like, I guess the sort of thing that went on, the fact that there's still as much of a cover up as there is, and that I guess the president had the audacity to be like, expressing annoyance that people were still talking about this, as though like we all should have moved on, despite the fact that this was never like, I mean, think about all the people who are still yet to be brought to justice, and how I guess government, like, it hasn't really mattered like what political party has like been in control. There has been a like massive bipartisan cover up, and I guess they just expected us to move on. Like that's what I mean. Like ultimately, they didn't see it as a big enough deal to, I guess, actually fully bring to resolution. It was something I don't know. I guess sell a few headlines for a little bit. You know, get into the algorithm, and then just yeah, people lose interest and move on. I don't know. That's just one thing about our society. Like I said, not only shows like our sense of, I guess, entitlement, but our short attention spans, or just like propensity to lose interest in something as soon as it stops being exciting. But I'm gonna like talk about it. If you've seen like the movie Salo, like that Italian movie, really what I think its implications are for, I guess, how power and exploitation function. The movie, it effectively does a number of things. It not only shows, I guess, the exploitation firsthand, um, as far as like, I guess the perpetrators are just like, I guess, taking advantage of these vulnerable people purely for their own pleasure. But I think it kind of holds a mirror up to the audience. I guess an audience member might find themselves at some point having the same sort of like morbid fascination, I guess, with, I guess, treating people as commodities, degrading them. And I know the audience isn't actually the one doing it, like the audience isn't doing it, but I guess to what degree are you complicit just by treating this almost as like, I don't want to say, well, yeah, entertainment basically. That I would say not so much amusement. I would say it's not so much about amusement for like most audience members, but it is absolutely about like a dark curiosity. You're intrigued by it. In the same way, I think people are intrigued by like, I guess, true crime podcasts. Like I guess I remember like I went through this whole phase where I was watching like police body cam footage, and it's like a lot of the titles of these videos would have like they would insinuate that there was something like really messed up, and then of course it was always either not showed on camera or it was blurred. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit disappointed. Like getting to the end of the video and saying like, "Oh, I thought I'd see like a rotting corpse or something." Sounds really messed up to say that out loud, but anyway, I think I've made the point that I'm trying to make. Ultimately, I mean, like I've heard like Sam Harris and I guess other people say, I mean, they'll point to like acts of violence carried out by, it's like a lot of the groups and entities that the U.S. wants to go to war with on behalf of, I guess, certain like colonial ideologies that it wants to like defend. And like, yeah, I definitely have no interest in, like, I guess, defending like brutal suppression and violence from like foreign regimes. Not the point at all, but it's to say that like people like Sam Harris and like Ted Cruz and Netanyahu will point to, I guess, just the total depravity of like that society, like Islamic society, and say like, look how it produces these barbarians, and look how it creates these monsters. When like at the end of the day, like the acts of brutality in many cases, uh, the acts of like extreme authoritarianism or like anything, these things ultimately come from a place of, I guess, doing what they feel like they need to do to preserve their society. They serve strategic ends. The violence isn't an end in itself. There's like whatever our elites have been doing, I guess, privately to, I guess, vulnerable people. Like I say, yeah, you're committing violence against like vulnerable human beings as an end in itself. That itself is, it serves no strategic advantage in their mind. That itself, it's an end in itself. And we can like point all we want to like the leaders of other countries and say, look at how cruel and depraved they are. And that doesn't defend, or that doesn't like justify the whole concept of, I guess, going to war and blowing them all up. What was it he said? Ending their civilization, I think El Duce said. And like, talked about my general disdain for, I guess, elite billionaires and the ruling class in the past, and just how I'm kind of increasingly seeing them as like sociopathic vultures. You just take like tech companies and social media companies. I guess looking at the way that it's been like scientifically demonstrated over and over again how social media is addictive. It's designed to be addictive, and how you know, this pretty much gets kids hooked on it. And so you've got like a generation of kids who like just their dopamine receptors have been totally fried, and like getting to the point where a lot of kids literally don't have like the chemistry to experience happiness. So I guess social media muggles wanted to make a buck off of their exploitation, and just I guess the level of like just I guess evil that it takes to I guess be up in your like ivory tower and I guess just get money off of the exploitation of children. That of course is like it's much more mainstream. It's like probably everybody knows, people who I guess have sunk into depression due to social media addiction. Like a lot of like minors, a lot of kids have fallen into that. Again, the science is well established, and I guess they just don't care. And really, of course, it's not even just. I don't even act like it's just some recent thing. Like this is only nowadays. This is not unprecedented at all. I guess the ruling class has never really cared about workers. I mean, you just look at the past 40, 50 years, how I guess we've destroyed working class communities by, I guess, outsourcing our labor. Shutting down a lot of manufacturing jobs that I guess working class people depended on. This is like totally just left places like Detroit and like other manufacturing centers. It's just completely devastated the local economies. Really, all just in an effort to, I guess, make more of a profit. I guess for the people at the top. And I would just this like combined with like Reaganomics and all that just allowed like the elites to continue cutting costs on their end to the detriment of the working class. And like for some reason we keep assuming they care. We assume that deep down they're really just they're good people. I'm not really seeing any evidence of like virtue on their part. They have a very pronounced interest in cutting costs to increase their own profits, and they seem to not really care who that hurts. I guess just keeping on that whole train of thought. I guess our as our like politicians have like looked upon the situation of I guess devastated community. Different pundits have I guess blamed the workers themselves as though like of course like the economic ruin that has led to a lot of poverty, that has led to a lot of I guess a lot of necessary welfare being spent on the people who were out of a job because I guess it was decided that their interests didn't matter. And here even hearing like pundits like will blame like welfare itself as though like somehow welfare ruined working class families, and just ignoring the whole fact that ultimately all along it's been the elites with the power to change society, and when they do something that just totally screws the working class, then it's I guess brushed under the rug, like it's not that big of a deal. That has just totally sent shockwaves, I guess, through the economy. It's objectively shown that the wealth gap is increasing. Yeah, the top 1%, they're continuing to concentrate like a higher percentage of wealth, and then the bottom 50%, like they're losing wealth consistently. And like this really has everything to do with like power imbalance across society, and I guess permanently rigging the system so that it stays the way it is. I think it's like I mean it's a lot of different factors. Not purely economic, but I guess the economic ruin and the economic devastation of the working class is really it's the source of a lot of the despair that we face in society. I guess just I mean we're seeing so much I guess just demoralization. We're seeing I mean people are dying of drug overdoses. People are getting hooked on like different substances. I guess even people who don't, there's just a general feeling of, I guess, being directionless in society. which I guess contributes to the whole sense of just constantly searching for stimulation, um, and I guess our short attention spans that result from that. I mean, yeah, I think it's just further alienating. Anytime I've heard somebody point to like, the Dow Jones, hitting like records, or the GDP is always going up. That's pretty cool. As though like these are the sole indicators of a healthy society. They're really not. And I think just finally, I think that promoting this whole idea that like we in the West, we have this society that's not only working so well for us, but it's honestly the ideal society that we need to defend. Not just on our own behalf, of course, that would make sense, but on behalf of, I guess, the whole world. Like all the other countries have got to be liberated and given our great, wonderful system. I don't think a lot of Americans realize the degree to which, I guess, so-called axis of resistance, Iran, Russia, like China, I guess how much that whole thing is motivated by not wanting, I guess Western society to, I guess, invade their society, if that makes sense. They don't want that influence. They don't want to be brought into our system. I guess it's easy to see how that would, in the long term, lead to the same sort of like deep demoralization and I guess just high levels of addiction, high levels of, I guess, having no sense of meaning. I mean, that's what they don't want to. That's what they don't want to be imposed on their country. Um, I mean, it's just a sense of like your strong booming economy and GDP and like stock market. That's not ultimately what makes like a healthy society. And I think that we in the West we do have a lot to just, I guess, reckon with. And honestly, I hope we do go down like a better, brighter pathway. But at this point, I don't think that we can really call ourselves like the great ideal civilization to the point that we're willing to like go push into the quote unquote barbaric wastelands and go liberate them so that they can be just as, I guess, depraved as we are. Again, yeah, I can already smell them climbing into my comments, like throwing the whole like, oh, you just hate Western civilization, you just hate like America and all that. Really, I think if anybody's honest with themselves, I think you can like look at society and say, as a whole, our society is not doing well, and that is not the fault of like it's not primarily the fault of, I guess, average people. I think the people at the top have shown themselves to be total and utter sociopaths, um, who control, I guess, the news media most of us consume, who have like further used that to their advantage. I think I definitely want to draw like a very firm line of demarcation between, I guess, the elites and I guess the whole rest of us. Anyway, I'm kind of trailing off and rambling now, so I should probably quit this video. But anyway, thank you.